Good afternoon. I am so happy to be able to share this moment with you. I was asked to talk about my journey as Grand Worthy Matron, but first I'd like to tell you a little bit about me. I was born in Wilmington, Delaware, the only child of Marion and Mark Robinson. I attended the public schools there, and I think the one thing of note is I grew up at a time when black people were not black people, they were colored people. I grew up in Wilmington where there was segregation, except I didn't see it as that because on the west side of Wilmington where I lived, the neighborhoods were integrated. There were colored people and there were Italians. And one interesting note at this time is that about 4 blocks down the street from where I lived was St. Anthony Catholic Church. That Catholic Church happens to have been the church where Vice President Biden recently buried his son Beau from. While my education was in segregated schools, the schools in Wilmington had excellent teachers. It was a time when no child was left behind. It was a time when the teachers took great interest in seeing that each child succeeded. What else can I tell you about me? There came a time when my mother remarried, and she happened to have married a Mason. And she became a member of the Eastern Star. She had known about the Eastern Star because her aunt, my great aunt, was an Eastern Star member, a past matron of Ada Chapter #1. And so she knew about the Eastern Star and wanted to join. I have to say that she started out being a very shy person. She no longer is that because of her journey with the Eastern Star. Ironically, I used to laugh about her white stockings when she left home. I used to call them sore legs. Many years down the road, after I had gone away to school and not returned home for good, I remained in the Washington area and married a Mason. During that time, I also met a past matron of Queen Esther Chapter who came to Wilmington one weekend with the daughters and the nobles of the shrine. And my mom invited the Washington contingent home to breakfast after the affair. And so there was a friendship with Aunt Delcy, as I called her, Delcy Camp, who became my voucher along with Tommy Mae Bland. After that, somehow or other, I was coerced into joining Queen Esther, the mother chapter of Eastern Star, the Order of the Eastern Star. The first chapter for women of color was founded right here in Washington, D.C. And so after I joined Queen Esther, with Aunt Delcy behind me, there was no doubt but that I was not going to sit on the sidelines, but that I was going to become involved. I remember my initiation day as vividly as it happened. There were a bunch of us, a crowd of us, who were given the Eastern Star degree on a blistering hot day. I thought it would never end. About that next month, I received a call from a past matron, not past matron, a worthy matron, Verdell Gaynor, who asked me if I would be her Eastern Star flag bearer. And of course, I dare not say no, because in that chapter, you didn't tell, I learned very early, you didn't say no to anybody. And so my first office was as an Eastern Star flag bearer. I went from there to order. I did Ada, I did Ruth, I did Martha, and Electa. The one station I really wanted to do was as marshal, because my mom had been a grand marshal in her grand chapter in Delaware. Never got to be that. I was worthy matron in 1985. I was excited to be that. We did a number of things. I remember the past matrons, one of the past matrons asked me if I would include in my program something that they had years before called the pink tea. Queen Esther had had a set of china teacups and saucers in a silver service that had been out of, not used for many years. And so I was delighted to do that. It was a very nice pink tea. It was held at 16th Street Baptist Church. Everybody who came was dressed in pink, so that was an occasion to behold. Another thing that we also had, I started a newsletter that was called The First Star. And the newsletter that I'm holding, the newspaper that I'm holding right now, is the inaugural edition. You can't see it, but there's a picture of a worthy patron, Nathaniel Lawrence, and myself, and there's the column with copies of our excerpts, from our inaugural addresses. It also advertises another project that we had, and that was called a fling. And we flew to the Bahamas as a chapter, as an activity. We also had, as a main activity, a dinner theater that was called Ain't Misbehavin', another very successful activity. And so, as time came along, and during that time, Queen Esther was known for its ritualistic work. We usually placed either in all 3 degrees, somewhere in the top first, second, or third degree, or we captured all 3 degrees, and there wasn't any doubt that Queen Esther officers would memorize their work. There wasn't any doubt that the officers would come to their rehearsals. There wasn't any doubt that the officers would be in their seats on time and ready to begin. Much of that seems to be missing now, and that is a great disappointment for me, because while we have many, many dedicated members of the Order of the Eastern Star who are as dedicated as we were back then, we also, it seems to me, have an equal number who are not as dedicated. And so we have to work on that. In the officers' meetings, and we had them regularly, the past matrons were always visible. They were always there to give us guidance and advice. And somewhere along the line, one of the past matrons said to me that soon the grand chapter will be celebrating its centennial. We need somebody from Queen Esther to run for that. It seems appropriate for a member of Queen Esther, since Georgiana Henson Thomas was a member of Queen Esther chapter. And so it looked like I was nominated to be that person to try for that office. And so I did. And fortune had it so that I would become the 100th Grand Worthy Matron of the Georgiana Thomas Grand Chapter, Order of the Eastern Star, Prince Hall affiliated with the District of Columbia in 1992. Georgiana Thomas Grand Chapter had been born in the home of, at least Queen Esther had been born in the home of Georgiana Henson Thomas on O Street. We tried to go back to that address in O Street and was unsuccessful. We also tried to locate family members who had been in this building during the tenure of past Grand Worthy Matron Cleo Davis, and since then we had lost touch. In 1989, I began my journey to the east. Past Grand Worthy Matron Jessie Ayers was then the Grand Worthy Matron. And the closer I got to the east, the more excited I became about being the centennial Grand Worthy Matron of the Georgiana Thomas Grand Chapter. I just knew that that year had to be a special year, and so it was. My theme was preserving our past while charting our course for tomorrow. That seemed fitting to me to be a theme for a centennial. And so the wheels began to turn, and I thought, somehow we have to make our members and the community aware of this great order of the Eastern Star. Now, how can we do that? And so one of the things we planned was to have a centennial weekend. And we did. We started out with a centennial concert at which we had the Grammy Award winning Tremaine Hawkins and the Richard Smallwood group. While the attendance, the Constitution Hall is a humongous place to fill, and we didn't do that, but it served its purpose for us to bring attention to our order. It was a wonderful evening, an expensive output for the Grand Chapter, but you're only 100 years once in a lifetime. And so we were doing it in a big way. Every step along the way, we tried to recapture those things that were historical. We honored our past Grand Worthy Matrons. We pulled out those charities that they had done during their years. And somewhere in my memorabilia, I have those programs. We had a centennial ball at a hotel downtown. We visited the grave sites of Georgiana Henson Thomas, where past Grand Worthy Matron Burl Yearwood had the foresight to have a fundraiser that put the prettiest granite tombstone, headstone for our founder that you would ever want to see. And so we made a pilgrimage to that site. We also made a pilgrimage to the site of Thornton A. Jackson, where we paid homage to him as well. Because without Thornton A. Jackson, you see, there would not probably have been an Eastern Star. Thornton A. Jackson was a member of Pythagoras Lodge number 9, and it was he who got the charter to establish Queen Esther Chapter number 1, which gave birth to 3 other chapters, Queen of Sheba, now number 2, and Gethsemane Chapter, now number 3, that were numbered otherwise during that time. And so it was required of the cabinet officers of the Grand Chapter to each have a charity in the community with their subordinate officers from each of the 13 chapters. Past Grand Worthy Matron Cheryl Williams did one for the Hospital for Sick Children. That was very successful for the Grand Chapter. We had a number of activities that we claimed in which we honored the idea of it being the centennial for the Grand Chapter. There was also another first. We had our grand lecturer was Diane Marshall Street, who actually was a junior matron, and so it was an honor for her to be named the grand lecturer for the Grand Chapter as a first. The assistant grand lecturer came from Ruth Chapter, the chapter of our grand worthy patron, King, grand worthy patron Reginald King from Ruth Chapter number 8. Louise Hopkins was historian at that time, and Louise Hopkins tried her very best to get the Today Show to honor this Grand Chapter on its 100th year. She wrote and wrote and wrote and was not successful. We know past matron Louise Hopkins from Datcher Chapter number 7 as a pretty savvy lady. And so she also wrote to Ebony to see if she could get an interest there and was unable to do so. This Grand Chapter also had the opportunity to go to the Bahamas while we were Grand Matron for a conference of Grand Chapters and Grand Masters and Grand Chapters. And while there, our then Grand Master, most worshipful Grand Master, Joseph Daniels, who went everywhere with the Grand Chapter and the Grand Matron, we were sitting around one evening and the Masonic Digest had just come out. And the editor at that time featured the Grand Chapter. And the Grand Master jokingly said, "Do you know this Grand Matron? My Grand Matron just took over my Masonic Digest. If you look at it, there's hardly anything in there about the Grand Chapter." And I tried to tell him, Grand Master, it wasn't my fault. It was your editor who thought the Grand Chapter should be featured during its 100th year. One of the things that this jurisdiction looked forward to during that centennial year was the Centennial Parade. There had been big plans for that parade. Every unit of the Masonic family was pledged to be in the parade. The night before the parade, we had had the Centennial Ball. And I came downstairs in the hotel ready to come to the temple to get ready for the parade. And I met then, and I can't remember what office now, past Grand Master Warren Whitley was then, but he met me in the lobby. He says, "Grand Matron, do you know that it is pouring rain outside?" I said, "No, it can't rain on our parade." And I went out and it really was, and I got to the temple as fast as I could. And the bands, the high school bands were here and ready, and we had prepared lunches for them when they came back from the parade, and it was just devastating for me. However, that day, our Grand Master, Joseph Daniels, helped this Grand Matron make lemonade out of lemons because we had an indoor parade on the 5th floor. The high school bands came in and played music, and we had a good time, and the food that we had prepared for those who were going to be in the parade, we sent to Martha's Table for an outreach. And so it was not as we had planned, but as you know, sometimes the best laid plans of mice and men oftentimes go astray. But we had a good time anyway. I have to say that it was an enjoyable year for the Masonic family to celebrate the anniversary, the 100th anniversary of the Georgiana Thomas Grand Chapter. I was very proud to be its Grand Matron. I was proud of the work that the officers and the members did to contribute to that celebration. I shall always remember that with great fondness. Thank you for listening.
Stay right there. Stay right there. 1 second. Give me a smile.